The printer jammed again. A single sheet hung half-crushed between the rollers, streaked with black toner, the smell of hot plastic coating the air. By the time I yanked it free, the office had gone too quiet. Too Friday quiet. No laughter from the break room, no keyboard chatter, just the faint buzz of the ceiling lights and the sound of my own breathing. That's when I saw it. The email from David Monroe. Subject line, all caps. See me immediately. He was my boss, regional operations director, the kind of guy who spoke in acronyms and volume, whose cologne hit you before his handshake did. I remember thinking, he's early. Our mid-year review wasn't for another 2 weeks, but maybe this was about the shipment delay last month, or the client call I missed while covering for Marcus's sick day. Either way, I wiped my hands on my khakis, tried to look composed, and headed for his glass-walled office. David was pacing when I entered. His tie was loosened, and a coffee stain dotted his shirt. He might have signed his shirt pocket, rare for him. The man usually looked airbrushed into existence. "Close the door," he said, not looking up. I did. He didn't sit, and neither did I. "You know what this is about?" he asked finally. "No," I said, "but I can guess it's not good." He exhaled through his nose, a kind of practiced disappointment. "You've been with us 8 years, Greg. You were reliable, consistent. That's why this is hard." I waited for but. It came quickly. "But after the audit last week, corporate's asking questions about your department's expense reports." My pulse picked up. "Expense reports? You mean the vendor contracts? Those were cleared months ago." "Not all of them," he said, pulling a folder from his desk. "There's an invoice discrepancy for $3,000. Your signature." I leaned in. "That's the security subcontractor. They overbilled. I flagged it, remember? Accounting said they'd fix it next quarter." He finally looked up. "And now it looks like you approved it." "I didn't." I stopped. He wasn't listening. He was watching my face, like he wanted me to look guilty. "Greg," he said, softer now, "they need someone to take responsibility. You're the senior ops manager. I can't have this going upstairs." "You're saying you want me to, what, take the fall?" He didn't answer right away. He just pinched the bridge of his nose. "I'm saying it'll go easier if you resign." I stared at him, at the skyline reflected in the glass behind him. Downtown Cleveland in winter, gray, indifferent, endless. "I'm not resigning over a typo," I said. He gave a small smile, the kind that never reached his eyes. "Then I'll have to terminate your employment, effective immediately." I laughed once quietly. "You're serious?" "I'm trying to protect you," he said. "You'll get a neutral reference. HR will process 2 weeks severance." The word neutral hit harder than terminated. It meant they'd scrub my name clean, not badmouth me, but also never admit I'd done good work. 8 years flattened into silence. I boxed my things that afternoon under fluorescent lights that made everything look like evidence. People walked by pretending to check the copier, pretending not to see. Only Maria, from HR, stopped at my cubicle. "Greg, she started, then glanced toward David's door. "I just wanted to say, it wasn't fair." "Thanks," I said. "Guess fairness isn't in the handbook." She looked like she wanted to say more, but she didn't. When I carried the box out to my car, the parking lot was glazed with sleet. The cardboard sagged under the damp. My badge still worked at the gate when I scanned out. Small mercies, I guess. The first weekend felt like static. I kept checking my email like some part of me expected a recall notice. Just kidding. Come back. Instead, I got an auto-generated HR exit survey link in silence. By Monday, I was sitting in my kitchen, laptop open, resume file blinking like an accusation. 8 years condensed into bullet points. I wrote and rewrote the line. Led regional operations team of 12. Maintained compliance with corporate audit standards. I deleted it, wrote it again. It felt dishonest, even though it was true, because under reason for leaving, I had nothing to write that wouldn't sound like rot. On Wednesday, I got the first call from Marcus. "Man, what the hell happened with you?" he asked. "David said you got caught altering invoices." "That's bull," I said. "He threw me under the bus. You know that subcontractor deal was his pet project." "I know," Marcus said. "But he's spinning it. Told the execs he caught the mistake himself. Said you tried to correct it after the audit." My jaw tightened. "He's rewriting history." "Yeah," Marcus said. "And it's working. HR's cleaning files fast." We talked for a few minutes about logistics, who was taking my accounts, what rumors were floating. But the whole time, I could hear the edge in his voice. Fear. The same fear that kept everyone quiet there. That night, I couldn't sleep. The rain drummed against the window, steady and low. I opened my work laptop, still logged into my personal drive because it hadn't locked me out yet, and found the audit folder. Every approval, every email, every timestamp. And there it was. The overbilled invoice, the correction request, my flagged note, and above it, an email from David. Approved per my authority. Timestamp 3 days before the audit. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe anger, maybe the quiet insult of how small he'd made me feel. But I exported everything. PDFs, emails, internal memos, and saved them on a flash drive, just in case. The next morning, my company login was disabled. 2 weeks passed. Started applying for jobs, mostly smaller logistics firms. Every application asked for a reference. Every time I listed David's name, because I didn't have anyone hire. Every call ended the same way. Polite interest, then sudden silence. By the third one, I asked the recruiter outright, "Did you talk to him?" A pause. "We did," she said carefully. "He described you as inconsistent with reporting standards." I hung up without saying goodbye. I almost drove to the office that day. The thought of walking in, holding that flash drive like a weapon, crossed my mind more than once. But then, I remembered Maria's face, how nervous she'd looked, and realized HR might be involved too. So instead, I printed everything out, each page marked with its timestamp, and sat at my dining table staring at the stack. I wasn't sure if it was evidence or just paper. The next Monday, a letter came. Plain envelope, no return address. Inside was my final paycheck and a short typed note. "As discussed, this concludes your employment. Thank you for your service." No signature. I left it on the counter and went for a walk. It was cold enough that my breath felt solid. I walked past the coffee shop I used to stop at before work, the bus stop where I'd seen David once giving a pep talk to an intern about professional optics. I wondered if that intern knew what kind of optics he really meant. It wasn't until Thursday night that the unexpected happened. My phone buzzed at 8:17 p.m. A new email, subject line, "Thank you." The sender, Corporate Legal, Atlantic Freight Division. My stomach dropped. For a second I thought maybe it was a cruel prank, but I opened it. "Mr. Haynes, we wanted to express our appreciation for your detailed documentation provided earlier this month. Your submission has been critical to an ongoing internal compliance review. We will be in touch regarding next steps. Please do not delete or alter any related correspondence." Legal Department. I sat back, heart hammering. Documentation provided? I hadn't sent them anything. Unless someone else had. The next morning, Maria called. "Greg," she said quietly, "you didn't hear this from me, okay? But legal pulled the audit files. Someone forwarded them. Everything, including David's approvals. Not me, I said. I know, but it's good you backed up your emails. They're matching timestamps. Turns out he edited the records after the audit. I didn't say anything. I could hear typing in the background, muffled voices. She lowered her voice further. Greg, they're opening an investigation. You might get a call. An investigation? I repeated. Into him? Into the entire regional office, she said. He tried to delete his message logs, but IT caught the revision history. After the call ended, I sat there staring at the kitchen wall, half laughing, half sick. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who'd fired me for reporting inconsistencies was now under review for falsifying documents. Still, I didn't celebrate. Not yet. I knew how slow corporate justice could move, how easily truth got paved over in layers of bureaucracy. But something inside me, something that had been crushed the day I carried that damp cardboard box through the sleet, started to breathe again. That weekend, I drove out to Lake Erie, parked by the pier, and just watched the water move under the ice. It looked the way my life felt, fragmented, but not still. Somewhere under the surface, things were shifting. I didn't tell anyone about the email, not even Marcus. Not yet. All I knew was that legal had said thank you. And in corporate language, that could mean the beginning of something or the end of someone. The following Monday felt heavier than most, not because of the weather, though February in Ohio has a way of pressing on you, but because I'd woken up to 3 new emails from names I didn't recognize, all from the same domain, at atlanticfreightlegal.com. The subject lines were plain: verification request, follow up on documentation, and the third one, interview scheduling. I opened the last one first. Mr. Haynes, we are conducting a formal inquiry into recent discrepancies in regional financial reporting. As a former operations manager, your insight and documentation are vital to the investigation. Please confirm your availability for a recorded interview, remote, this week. Regards, J. Porter, Corporate Legal Counsel. The kind of email that forces you upright before you've even had your first sip of coffee. I reread it twice. The word recorded stood out. That meant this wasn't some courtesy check-in. They were building a case. By the time the Zoom link came through later that afternoon, I'd gone through every file on my flash drive, reordering, checking dates, matching email threads. My living room looked like a crime scene. Papers spread across the coffee table, a yellow legal pad full of notes, my laptop open to the internal vendor portal I'd somehow still had archived access to. I didn't know if I was a whistleblower or a witness. Maybe both. The interview itself was oddly calm. 3 people joined the call. Janet Porter, legal counsel, early 50s, controlled tone, spoke like each sentence was pre-screened. Alan Pierce, HR compliance investigator, a man I didn't know, who didn't introduce himself, just took notes and watched me like I was a camera test. Greg, Janet started, we appreciate your cooperation. We're reviewing internal correspondence from November through January related to subcontractor payments. Can you confirm whether you handled vendor approval for North Star Security? Yes, I said. But the final sign-off came from David Monroe. Did you have reason to believe those invoices were altered? I flagged one as overbilled, I said, leaning forward. I sent a correction request. It was overwritten 3 days later, not by me. Janet looked off screen, nodded at someone unseen. We have record of that. Thank you. There was a long pause before Alan spoke. Were you aware that Mr. Monroe submitted a performance memo describing you as unreliable with documentation? I am now, I said. He clicked his pen once. He used that memo to justify termination. We're determining whether that memo was retaliatory in nature. That word, retaliatory, hung in the air. Janet leaned back, studying me. You've worked under him for how long? 8 years. Any prior incidents, complaints, conflicts? None, until I stopped covering for his mistakes. By the time the call ended, I was sweating through my shirt. Janet's last words were precise. We'll be in touch soon, Mr. Haynes. Please keep your correspondence secure and refrain from discussing this matter externally. Which, in corporate English, meant don't talk to anyone, don't post about it, and don't disappear. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in my apartment felt amplified. The fridge hum, the pipes, the wind against the windows. I half expected to wake up to another email, or worse, a lawyer's letter demanding I stop misrepresenting company interests. Instead, around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. You didn't deserve what he did. Be careful who you talk to. No name, no context. I texted back. Who is this? No response. The number wasn't saved in my contacts, but the area code matched the corporate office's zip. The next morning, I called Marcus. Man, you've got people whispering, he said before I even said hello. What kind of whispering? That legal's digging deep. They pulled David's company card transactions and internal messages. Everyone's nervous. I rubbed my forehead. Has he said anything? Not to me directly, but he's in full spin mode. Told corporate you were emotionally unstable after being passed for promotion. He even said you'd been acting paranoid about audits. I laughed, but it came out wrong, more bitter than amused. Of course he did. Greg, be careful, Marcus said. He's calling in favors. You know how he is. Everyone owes him something. Not everyone, I said. Later that week, I got another email from legal. This time it wasn't a request. It was a notice. This is to inform you that the Compliance Review Board has escalated the matter to Corporate Ethics and Audit. You may be required to provide testimony under oath. Under oath? I stared at those words for a long minute. I wasn't the kind of guy who went up against corporations. I showed up, did the work, followed the chain of command. I wasn't built for whistleblower territory. But there I was, the guy holding the receipts. By Friday, the gossip started breaking through the LinkedIn grapevine. A former coworker messaged me privately. Hey, heard something's happening at Atlantic Freight. Your old boss is on leave? You okay? Leave. That word said a lot without saying much. I searched his name online. Nothing yet. No press releases, no LinkedIn updates, just his smiling headshot from some leadership conference, frozen in time, still touting words like integrity and transparency. The next few weeks were a strange limbo. Every morning I'd make coffee, open my laptop, and check both inboxes, personal and corporate, the latter still forwarding any stray messages. Each time, I felt like someone standing at the edge of a storm, waiting for thunder that wouldn't come. Bills were piling up, severance gone, job applications unanswered. One night, I drove to the old office parking lot just to see it again. The lights were on. I sat in my car, engine off, watching through the glass. The bullpen looked the same. Desks, monitors, chairs, all familiar, all foreign. Then I saw him. David, standing by the copier, gesturing at someone, voice sharp enough to read through body language. He still looked like he owned the place. For a second, I wanted to get out of the car, walk right in, tell everyone the truth. But something stopped me. A security guard crossed the lobby just then, and the thought hit me. I wasn't one of them anymore. 2 days later, another email arrived, this time from Janet directly. Greg, we've concluded preliminary findings. You are not implicated in any wrongdoing. However, we may need your written statement to finalize internal proceedings. Confidentially, I can tell you, you did the right thing documenting everything. J. Porter. I read it 3 times. Not implicated. It didn't mean cleared, but it meant safe. Then, about an hour later, another notification came through. A forwarded message from Marcus. He's gone. Official email just went out. David Monroe resigned, effective immediately, for personal reasons. I stared at the screen, feeling nothing at first. No joy, no relief, just quiet. After a while, it sank in. 8 years of loyalty, 2 weeks of humiliation, and now 3 words buried in a corporate email: personal reasons. That's how it always goes. The higher-ups never fall loudly. They just fade behind the phrasing. That night, I opened a beer and sat on the floor beside my coffee table, the same table that had held my evidence stack weeks ago. I scrolled through my old work emails one last time. Then I stopped on one from a year back. A simple thank you note from David himself. "Couldn't have pulled off Q3 without you, Greg. You make us look good." I almost laughed. Us. I closed the laptop and let the room stay dark except for the small light from the fridge. The next morning, another email arrived. Short, unsigned. "Greg, we can't officially acknowledge your role in this investigation, but your documentation prevented a major compliance breach. There will be a quiet internal adjustment to your personnel file. Corporate legal." I didn't know what quiet internal adjustment meant. Maybe it meant my record would no longer say terminated, maybe resigned, maybe just blank. Either way, it felt like breathing again after weeks underwater. Marcus called later that evening. "So you're vindicated, huh?" "Something like that," I said. "You know, rumor is they're restructuring the whole department. Legal wants outside hires, new ops manager coming in." "Good," I said. "Maybe they'll get someone who knows what integrity actually means." He chuckled. "You should apply." I laughed for real that time. Not a chance. "Still," he said, his tone softening, "I hope you land somewhere better." Me too. I spent the next few weeks picking up contract work, small logistics consulting gigs, a few remote audits. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid rent and gave me time to think. Every now and then, I'd get a LinkedIn notification. "David Monroe viewed your profile." Always late at night, always once. He never sent a message. Then, one morning in March, I got another email from corporate legal again. But this time, the subject line made me sit up straight. "Settlement acknowledgement confidential." Inside. "Mr. Haynes, as part of internal resolution proceedings, the board has authorized a discretionary payment for your cooperation and assistance. Please confirm receipt of the attached NDA before funds are released." I opened the attachment. It was real. A non-disclosure agreement and a compensation offer. More than my entire severance combined. The note at the bottom read simply, "For your integrity and contribution to company compliance." I didn't sign it right away. I read it twice, then printed it out, staring at the clause that said I'd never publicly discuss the circumstances surrounding my departure. It didn't feel like justice. It felt like containment. But justice, I realized, doesn't come in big gestures. It comes in quiet corrections, emails, file updates, internal memos, and sometimes in a line as short as "thank you." That night, I drove past the office one last time. The lights were still on, but the nameplate on the door had changed. New manager. New order. The reflection of the building in my windshield looked cleaner, sharper, like nothing had ever happened there. But I knew. Somewhere in their servers, my emails, my notes, my timestamps, they were still there. Proof that sometimes the only thing more dangerous than being wrong is being right too soon. The email sat open on my laptop for hours. The NDA, the settlement offer, both written in the kind of sterile, legal phrasing that manages to sound polite and predatory at once. Every time I scrolled to the signature page, my cursor hovered but never clicked. I knew what it meant. Signing it would close the chapter, but it would also seal it, silence it forever. And yet, the money was enough to clear my debts, catch up on rent, maybe even take a breath for the first time in months. I stared at the dollar amount again. It didn't feel like a reward. It felt like hush money. That night, I took the elevator up to the rooftop of my building. It was late March, and the city smelled like thawing concrete and distant rain. Down below, traffic rolled like waves, steady, uncaring. I thought about the day I was fired, the sound of the printer jamming, the way David hadn't looked at me once as he handed over the termination folder. 8 years. 8 years of work condensed into one final line in my HR record. And now, one digital signature could erase even that line, rewrite the story into something clean. I closed the laptop without signing. The next morning, I took my coffee black and bitter, scrolling through job listings. The monotony was numbing. Endless bullet points, recycled buzzwords, team player, agile mindset, results-oriented. Every description sounded like a lie someone told themselves in an exit interview. Halfway through my search, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but the message preview froze me mid-sip. Mr. Haynes, this is Alan Pierce from Compliance. Please call when available. There's been a development. Alan's voice on the phone was quieter than I remembered. Greg, thanks for getting back to me. I wanted to let you know there's an external inquiry now. External? I asked. As in government? SEC oversight, he said. They're reviewing some discrepancies that go beyond Monroe's region. Your documentation helped open it. I didn't speak for a moment. You're saying this went higher? He hesitated. Let's just say David wasn't the only one who benefited from those inflated vendor invoices. We're looking at cross-regional kickbacks, some tied to corporate leadership. The room suddenly felt smaller. Am I involved in that investigation? Not directly, but they might contact you. Just keep everything you have. Don't sign or delete anything yet. So there it was. The reason legal had moved so fast with their thank you payment. They weren't cleaning up after David. They were containing a fire before it reached the top floors. That night, I didn't sleep. Every memory of the last few years began replaying in sharper focus. The times David had bragged about his corporate dinners, the mysterious bonuses after canceled projects, the private calls he took in the break room. It all made sense now. He hadn't thrown me under the bus to save his job. He'd done it to protect the people above him. Following week was quiet, eerily so. No new emails, no calls, just silence, like the whole thing had been absorbed into the corporate ether. Until a small envelope arrived in my physical mailbox. Handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single folded note. He didn't act alone. M. No explanation. No context. Just that. The handwriting was neat. Careful. I didn't need to guess twice who M was. Maria. I debated calling her. I knew she was taking a risk. HR people don't leak information. Not unless they're drowning in guilt or trying to help someone surface. I waited a day, then texted her from a burner app just in case. Got your note. You okay? A few minutes later, 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then finally, I'm fine. Just be careful. People above David are trying to frame the correction incident as rogue behavior. They'll make it look like it started and ended with him. Do they know you reached out? No. And let's keep it that way. Why tell me? Because you deserve to know they were going to make you the fall guy for everything until legal saw your flagged email chain. They even had a draft memo. I stared at the text, feeling my chest tighten. A draft memo. A pre-written narrative, ready to make me disappear quietly if the timing had worked out differently. I spent the next few days replaying that thought. Somewhere on some executive's computer, my reputation had been one signature away from obliteration. Then, another email arrived. This time from an address I didn't recognize. Not corporate, not personal. The subject line read, Ethics Board Notice Statement Request.pdf. Inside, Mr. Haynes, this message is to inform you that your prior documentation has been referenced in a broader corporate compliance inquiry initiated by the Federal Oversight Committee. You may be asked to confirm certain details for accuracy. We appreciate your previous cooperation and discretion. Federal Oversight. That wasn't company spin anymore. That was real. I exhaled slowly. My small act of saving files had become something bigger than me. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Marcus. His voice was low, urgent. Greg, I don't know what you did, man, but David's name is all over the news internally. They're saying the FBI subpoenaed records from HQ. FBI? Yeah. Something about financial misconduct. It's bad. People are panicking. Are you okay? I asked. I think so, he said. They're interviewing managers. Half the staff is cleaning up old emails. I rubbed my eyes. They can't bury it this time. He sighed. They'll try, but I think this one's too big. That night, I finally signed the NDA, but not the corporate one. I drafted my own, a private promise that if the truth ever tried to get buried again, I'd speak. Not online, not for revenge, but because silence was what let people like David thrive. A few weeks later, I was sitting at a diner when the TV above the counter caught my eye. Local news segment. The anchor was talking about corporate fraud at a regional freight company. No names, no faces, but I didn't need them. The numbers were there. Over $2 million in falsified vendor contracts. One executive under internal investigation, another placed on administrative leave. Then the anchor added, the company has credited the discovery to an anonymous whistleblower whose internal documentation helped uncover the irregularities. I nearly dropped my coffee. They didn't name me, but they didn't have to. When I got home that evening, another email waited. From Janet. Short, professional, but with an undertone I hadn't seen before. Respect. Greg, you may see press coverage soon regarding Atlantic Freight's audit issues. You are not to be contacted directly by media, but I wanted to thank you personally. The board quietly reinstated your employment record as voluntary resignation, with full benefits retroactive to termination. It's not public, but it's permanent. I stared at that line. It's not public, but it's permanent. For the first time since everything began, I smiled. A small, tired, honest smile. Weeks later, I met Maria in person at a small park near the edge of downtown, under the excuse of accidentally bumping into each other. She looked exhausted but lighter. They can't fire me, she said, half laughing. Legal flagged me as a cooperating employee. Good, I said. You saved me. She shook her head. You saved yourself. I just handed the right file to the right person. We sat in silence for a while, watching a flock of pigeons scatter and settle again. The world kept moving, the way it always does. Before she left, she said, What are you going to do now? I looked toward the skyline, gray again, the way Cleveland always looks before rain. Maybe start over, I said. But this time, I'll keep copies of everything. She smiled. That's the most corporate answer I've ever heard. That night, I opened a fresh document on my laptop. Not a resume this time, just a blank page. At the top, I typed, For the record. Then I started writing, not because I needed to prove anything anymore, but because I needed to remember how it felt, to lose everything for doing the right thing, to get it back quietly, without applause, to understand that sometimes justice doesn't shout, it whispers. I didn't plan to become a whistleblower. If you'd told me a year earlier that I'd be part of a federal investigation, I would have laughed and gone back to fixing spreadsheets. But there I was, 39 years old, unemployed, technically vindicated, and still checking my email every morning like a man waiting for another shoe to drop. The strangest part was the silence that followed the storm. After the initial legal chaos, things went unnervingly quiet. No calls, no press, just the occasional dry update from Janet in legal. All proceedings remain confidential. You are cleared from all involvement. Do not respond to inquiries. Every email felt like both protection and isolation. It took me a few weeks to realize what silence really meant. In corporate terms, silence is how they erase you. No public apology, no mention of your name, no reinstatement announcement. Just void. You exist again on paper, but not in memory. Still, it was better than being the scapegoat. By late spring, I'd started taking freelance work from a local logistics startup. Small team, honest hours, no corporate gloss. The founder, a guy named Eli Turner, was ex-supply chain, early 40s, pragmatic, the kind of boss who still carried his own clipboard. He'd read my resume and said, 8 years at Atlantic Freight, huh? They've been in the news lately. I hesitated. Yeah, I was there before all that. He didn't pry. He just nodded, then added, I like people who've seen what not to do. That's how I got hired. No background check questions, no whispered references, just trust. Something I hadn't felt from a manager in a long time. The first few weeks were uneventful in the best way. I managed routing spreadsheets, handled inventory tracking, and got used to the rhythm of the office. Less glass walls, more coffee mugs, and open windows. Still, some nights I'd catch myself scrolling back to those old Atlantic Freight emails, rereading Janet's final note like it was some talisman. It's not public, but it's permanent. Those words lingered like a tattoo. Then, one afternoon in May, Marcus called again. His voice had that nervous tone I'd come to recognize, the one people use when they're about to tell you something that might break the quiet you've built. Greg, he said, remember that external inquiry? The one legal said went federal? Yeah. They're not done. A few subpoenas just hit the executive team. Word is they've linked the kickback accounts to someone high up at headquarters. I swallowed. How high up? CFO level, he whispered. You didn't hear that from me. I felt a chill crawl through me, even though the sun was hitting the blinds. He continued, they're pulling email servers again. They want every document tied to the North Star contracts. That's the one that started it all, I said quietly. Exactly. You were the one who flagged it. They're calling you the initial data point in the case. I exhaled slowly. So I'm evidence now? Yeah, Marcus said. Evidence with a pulse. Later that night, I found an email waiting in my inbox, this time from a date.gov address. Mr. Haynes, we are contacting you regarding the ongoing federal review into Atlantic Freight's financial reporting practices. Please confirm a time for a follow-up statement verification. Regards, U.S. Department of Corporate Compliance and Ethics, DCCE. For a long moment, I just stared at the header. My name, the government seal. It didn't feel real. I wasn't an employee anymore. I wasn't even a suspect. But somehow, my quiet act of saving a few files had rippled all the way to Washington. The interview took place over a secure video call. 2 agents, both polite in that overly measured government way. Mr. Haynes, one of them began, we're verifying a chain of events related to your internal audit flags at Atlantic Freight. Specifically, your interaction with Mr. Monroe and any knowledge of higher-level authorizations. I had none, I said truthfully. I was told to approve vendor contracts that came pre-cleared from corporate. I questioned one overcharge. That's what led to my firing. The other agent nodded. We've reviewed those records. You handled yourself correctly. Your correspondence helped verify a pattern of falsified expense flows. Then he added, you should know your documentation prevented further payouts. It's not often we get that kind of traceability. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. The call ended 15 minutes later with a simple, almost casual sign-off. Thank you for your integrity, Mr. Haynes. We may reach out again. When the screen went black, I just sat there staring at my reflection in the laptop. Integrity. It sounded good when other people said it, but living it had cost me almost everything. Over the next few months, life started to find a new rhythm. I worked, I cooked, I went on walks near the lake again. Sometimes, I'd see David Monroe's name pop up online, buried deep in articles about corporate fraud, no longer smiling in photos. Former executive, under investigation, no comment. No one mentioned my name. And that was fine. I didn't need a headline, but sometimes I'd imagine what he must have felt reading that same phrase I once read. We'll be in touch regarding next steps. Except this time, it was the law reaching out to him. One quiet Sunday, I got a letter in the mail. Not email, real paper, in a formal envelope with the Atlantic Freight logo. My stomach turned as I opened it. Dear Mr. Haynes, as part of our internal review conclusion, we have officially amended your personnel record to reflect resignation in good standing. Additionally, we have reinstated your service recognition status for tenure and contributions between 2014 to 2022. We regret any misunderstanding that may have occurred and thank you for your years of dedication. No signature, no apology by name, just corporate repentance in its purest form. Passive, careful, incomplete, but still, acknowledgement. I folded it once, slid it into the drawer with the flash drive. The circle had closed. A few weeks later, Maria messaged me out of nowhere. Can you meet for coffee? We met at a corner cafe downtown. She looked more relaxed this time, hair down, no badge lanyard around her neck. They offered me a severance package, she said. A good one. I took it. You leaving? She nodded. Yeah, I couldn't stay there. Too many ghosts. We sat for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid between us. Then she smiled faintly. You know, when I forwarded those files to legal, I thought I was just doing the right thing for HR compliance. You were, I said. Turns out I was doing something bigger. You too. Maybe, I said. Or maybe we just stopped lying for people who got used to never being caught. She smiled. Either way, I'm glad you didn't disappear. That night, I finally opened the flash drive again. Every document was still there, untouched. I thought about deleting them, but couldn't. They were proof, not of the crime, but of the truth. And maybe, someday, someone else would need that kind of proof too. I created one last folder, labeled it Integrity Archive, and zipped it shut. Then I shut the laptop and let the silence of my apartment fill up with something new. Peace, maybe, or just the absence of fear. By August, the investigation became public record. News outlets reported that multiple Atlantic Freight executives were indicted for systematic falsification of operational expenses to inflate profit margins. The company issued a formal apology. Stock prices dipped, then stabilized. A familiar line appeared at the bottom of one article. The initial discovery came from internal documentation flagged by a mid-level operations manager who remains anonymous. I smiled quietly. Anonymous was fine with me. Sometimes I still wake early, make coffee, and watch the sunrise over the city skyline. The light always hits the buildings the same way. Clean, uncaring, new. And I think about all the people still trapped in offices like that, where truth gets filed under pending. It's funny. Getting fired felt like losing everything. But now, looking back, it was the best kind of freedom. Because it taught me that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't make you a hero. It just keeps you human. It's strange how ordinary the world looks after the storm that nearly ruined you. The same streets, the same traffic lights, the same morning radio host talking about baseball scores. No one around you knows that. Somewhere in the background, you fought an invisible war and somehow survived it. That was me. Almost a year after everything began, I was finally breathing again. I'd settled into the new job at Eli's small logistics company. Different pace, different values. No suits, no jargon, no boardroom mirrors pretending to be windows. We worked out of an old converted factory building with chipped floors and a smell of machine oil that never quite left the air. I liked it that way. It felt real. Every morning I'd arrive early, unlock the back door, and let the sunlight spill across the warehouse floor. The echo of footsteps was comforting, like proof that life kept moving forward, even when memory wanted to drag you back. One Monday, Eli waved me into his office. "Got a minute?" he asked, smiling. "Don't worry, you're not in trouble." I laughed. "You know, that phrase gives me hives now." He chuckled. "Fair. Anyway, I got an email this morning from a client, one of the new suppliers we're vetting. Turns out their head of logistics used to work at Atlantic Freight. Name ring a bell? Monica Jenkins?" The name froze me mid-breath. Monica had been David's direct assistant, his gatekeeper, the one who sent calendar invites and polite denials to anyone who tried to reach him without permission. "She's still there?" I asked carefully. Eli shook his head. "Nope. Left a few months ago. Apparently she was part of the shakeup. They said she's starting fresh, too." I nodded slowly. "Good for her." He leaned back. "She mentioned she knows you. Said you were one of the only people there who treated her like a person." That caught me off guard. "Did she?" "Yeah. Said you once stayed late to help her fix an inventory report because David dumped it on her last minute." I remembered that night. She'd been new, nervous, terrified of making a mistake that would set him off. I'd stayed because I couldn't stand watching someone else drown quietly. Eli continued. "She wanted me to tell you something. Her exact words. Tell Greg he was right to keep everything." He smiled. "I don't know what that means, but she said you would." I did. I absolutely did. That night, I walked home instead of driving. The spring air had that clean, metallic smell it gets right before rain. For the first time in months, I didn't check my email when I got home. I didn't need to. The investigation was long over now. David Monroe had officially been charged with multiple counts of wire fraud and document falsification. His sentencing hearing was in 2 weeks. The news said he was cooperating with authorities. Corporate code for pleading out before the system eats you alive. I hadn't been asked to testify. My documentation had spoken for itself. When the hearing day came, I didn't plan to go. But that morning, I found myself driving downtown anyway. The courthouse was colder than I remembered. High ceilings, gray marble, the sound of shoes echoing like ghosts. I sat in the back row, unnoticed, just another face in the gallery. David walked in wearing a dark suit that didn't quite fit anymore. His hair was thinner. His eyes darted nervously, scanning the room as though still searching for control. When the judge read the charges, his jaw clenched, but he didn't look defiant. He just looked tired. The same kind of tired I'd once felt, but his was earned differently. The sentence was light compared to the damage he'd caused. Probation, fines, restitution, no prison. Corporate men rarely get prison. When it ended, he turned slightly, scanning the seats. For a brief second, our eyes met. Neither of us spoke, but I knew he recognized me. He didn't glare, didn't sneer, just nodded, once, almost like acknowledgement or apology. Then he was gone, swallowed by his attorney and the flashing bulbs outside. I didn't follow him. I stepped out into the afternoon sun and just stood there for a moment, hands in my pockets, breathing in the air. No cameras, no interviews, no statements. I wasn't there for revenge. I just needed to see it end. That night, I went home and opened my laptop one final time. The flash drive sat beside it, that little silver thing that had started everything. I plugged it in, opened the folder labeled Integrity Archive. Inside were hundreds of files, emails, Invoices, screenshots, notes. Every page that had nearly cost me my life, and then somehow given it back. I scrolled to the bottom, selected them all, and right-clicked. Delete. The confirmation box popped up. Are you sure you want to permanently delete these files? I hovered over yes for a long time, then clicked it. They were gone. For the first time in a year, I felt light, not vindicated, not triumphant, just done. A few weeks later, Maria sent me a postcard from Denver. She'd started a new job at a nonprofit that helped whistleblowers navigate retaliation cases. Her handwriting was neat, confident this time. You were my reminder that honesty can survive bureaucracy. Hope you're doing well, Greg. P.S. I still back up everything. I pinned it to the fridge with a magnet. Sometimes, when people ask why I left Atlantic Freight, I tell them the truth, just the short version. I got fired for catching something I wasn't supposed to see. They usually laugh awkwardly, not sure if I'm joking. I let them. Because the full story isn't something you can explain between coffee breaks or on a resume. It's not about a company or a boss or even the law. It's about what happens when you choose to tell the truth in a place that runs on silence. A few months later, Eli promoted me to operations director. Smaller office, smaller salary than before, but bigger peace. And when I signed that offer letter, I realized something that hadn't hit me until then. I'd become the kind of boss I used to wish for. Someone who doesn't need to save face. Someone who remembers what it feels like to be on the other side of a closed door, waiting for someone to tell you your work doesn't matter anymore. Sometimes, I still think about that first email from legal. Thank you. Just 2 words that changed everything. But now they mean something different. Now when I read them in my memory, I hear them the way they were probably intended. Thank you for not staying silent. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.